How are you, dear DB2Tube followers? Today I bring you coronavirus conspiracy and who are they involved behind this pandemic virus by Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, American Indian scientist. He obtained PhD in biological engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology in system biology, and also he wrote a lot of important books. Please listen carefully until the end of video. I hope you guys will get important information for this discussion. Enjoy and learn the discussion. Have a nice time.
And my very special guest today is Shiva Ayyadurai, and he's a systems biologist. He's an Indian-American scientist, inventor, and entrepreneur. So I'll start right from the beginning. Shiva, you grew up in New Jersey,
That's right.
and your parents were
From India. Both of them were from South India, but then they moved to Bombay in the 70s. So we came here in 1977. I'm sorry, 1970.
I see.
And we settled in New Jersey.
And what did your parents do?
So it's interesting, my mom was a systems analyst, and my dad was a chemical engineer. So it's interesting, 30 years later, I become a systems biologist.
And your grandmother was a healer.
Yeah, so I grew up in this world where, as a young child, my grandmother was in a small village, and she was a siddhar, and she could look at people's faces and understand what was going on inside their body. It's an ancient science called Samudrika Lakshanam. But it's based in the Siddha and Ayurvedic tradition, and based on that analysis, she would give personalized medicine. So some people got herbs, some people got combinations, so it was fascinating to see her. To have a deep discussion here about the not so obvious establishment. This is sort of the second part, what I call the real enemy, but we're going to really go about what's going on here and now. And the reason this is important to talk about is, as many of you know, hi everyone, I spent a lot of time, if we review the last 3 weeks, I started the entire Fire Fauci campaign, and that Fire Fauci campaign really came out of a political systems, scientific analysis of what Fauci really represents. He really represents the front man for the deep state. And the deep state in this case represents an entire cabal of individuals, including foundations, the Bill Gates Foundation, the Hillary Clinton Foundation, sort of the two doppelganger twins. You have the new one, Chan Zuckerberg, coming in. That foundation, so basically, as I talked about, evade taxes, and they put money to their own family foundations, acting as though they're helping all of us. Frankly, a neo-missionary attitude. Then I also talked about that we have the WHO and the CDC and the Chinese Communist Party. And basically, these foundations, the WHO, the CDC, the Chinese Communist Party, and the big pharma establishment really don't give a damn about nations. They don't give a damn about you. And then I talked about the medical establishment, the big academia, big hospitals. This entire cabal is based on fear-mongering. They fear-monger us with some imminent infectious disease always going to come, and it's going to wipe us out, and therefore we should all give up all of our power to them. Fear-mongering, fascism, but founded on fake science. Unfortunately, there are very few scientists who will come out publicly to really go after these guys, and I've been, I guess, fortunate to have the opportunity to really share this knowledge and bring people together. So that knowledge, what I'm hoping, is penetrating to the extent that we start understanding principles, because if we don't understand principles, what ends up occurring is we keep making historical mistakes. So when a crisis like this occurs, it's a huge opportunity for all of us to understand that if we take away from this opportunity the fundamental concepts of the immune system, that the immune system is not something weak. It's not something that can be attacked by a virus and damaged by this. In fact, what the truth is, from the scientific truth is, it's the fact that a compromised immune system occurring from all sorts of different things, including inability for people to understand how to take care of their health, dirty air, dirty water, dirty food, pre-existing conditions. These actually lower our immune systems, and then we have an overactive immune system
which attacks our tissues and our own cells, which we then call disease. So that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway we talked about was this cabal, which I've just talked about. But the third one that I want to talk about today is the not so obvious establishment. If you look at the history of human struggle, essentially it's been a fundamental struggle about freedom versus slavery. That's what it's really been about. And this goes back thousands of times. And over time, hopefully, we've been chipping away at this to get more and more towards freedom. However, every time we chip away, which means we the people bottoms up, and that's a term I'm going to use in this discussion today, bottoms up, those in power are extremely sophisticated. They come through the obvious establishment, like the Faucis, but they also have the much more insidious group called the not so obvious establishment. And if you look at history, it's not been the establishment that actually suffocates the progress of freedom towards slavery, but it is a not so obvious establishment. People who they give power to, thinking, oh, this person's going to help me. And most of those people come from the top down. And you'll notice whether it's the establishment coming top down or the not so obvious establishment coming top down, the anointed ones, they do not want leaders coming bottoms up, be it like me, like you, and others. They do not want people coming bottoms up using, without Botox, using these cameras here, talking to you. They want it top down, well manicured, either side. So let's start this discussion, because we need to understand that whether it's Bill Gates or Hillary Clinton, they're both evil. Let me repeat again. Whether it's Bill Gates or Hillary Clinton, they're both evil. So if you see some leadership barking at Bill Gates suddenly, but they are mum about Hillary Clinton, you got to watch out. That's one red flag. What is going on? And that's a red flag of the not so obvious establishment. Similar, if someone's barking at Hillary Clinton and you get all excited, oh yeah, that person's attacking Hillary, I hate Hillary, but they don't say nothing against Gates, then you know that's a signal. So let's talk about what's going on here and now, because here and now is an opportunity for everyone to learn important historical lessons, because what we're in the midst of is a crisis that has been manufactured by this cabal, be it Bill Gates or Hillary Clinton, Big Pharma, to take away our powers, to destroy our economy, to squash dissent, and to mandate medicine. As I said in my tweet, that's really started all of this. So three things. This is one of the biggest fear-mongering hoaxes occurring right before our very eyes: to squash dissent, to destroy an economy as a weapon, so we all say, oh my God, okay, vaccinate me. Okay, oh my God, give me whatever medicines you have. And who's behind this? I'm going to talk about two people today that everyone should be aware of and probably has hopefully a distaste towards. One of them, as you see on the right here, let me bring it up, you'll see right here, is someone called Bill Gates on the right. The other one is Hillary Clinton. I was going to say Hillary Gates. You could probably say Bill Clinton or Hillary Gates. It doesn't matter. They go hand in hand. But these two pictures represent two of the forces of the deep state. They come to us, by the way, acting as though they want to help all of us. That's one of the things they want to do. I've seen these people when I was a kid growing up in India. These politicians would come, oh, I'm going to give you a bag of rice. I'm going to help you out. We stand for you. In the modern world, we have people like this nonsense, okay? These two individuals who basically grew up, in environments or became part of the cabal, that they are now going among the dark matter of the world, be it poor people, whites and blacks, be it Africans and Indians, and telling them they are the anointed ones who are going to help them, okay? So let's look at each one of them a little bit. And if you take a look at this fellow, Bill Gates, or Gil Bates, Bill Gates, you have to understand that if you look at his background, he did not invent DOS, which was one of his claims. He actually bought it from someone and flipped it, and that's how he really made all of his money. He's presented as some great innovative guy, Harvard dropout. It's a false story. Now, I actually created email. This guy actually did not create DOS. But that's the mythos that's created by the mainstream media to present him as some savior. So here's Bill Gates, and if we go through his, he runs the Melinda and Gates Foundation, as many people are aware of. Let me bring this slide up over here. And this is something, it's called the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and you can do some interesting work on her. She's a piece of work also. And here, you will see here, here's Anthony Fauci, meeting with Bill Gates. So clearly Fauci has a relationship, they're meeting, and this is on one hand, you have the Melinda Gates Foundation, you have, by the way, is this being cut off, Jen, on the bottom? Let me just, if it's being cut off, everyone say, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so everyone can see it. Is that better, Jen? Can you guys see that? Yes, is that better? Yeah. Okay, so you have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. On the other hand, you have Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton herself has a foundation. It's called the Clinton Global Initiative, and this foundation, like the Gates Foundation, move this up a little bit. There. Okay. Like the Gates Foundation, has its own interesting goals, which is again a neo-missionary model to help everyone on the planet, and they're the ones who are going to deliver all the goods. Both of these foundations are multi-billion-dollar foundations, and they're family foundations. So instead of paying taxes, which all of us have to do, they remove billions of dollars out of taxable income and put it into a foundation, and they tell us how great they're helping us, okay? Because, by the way, lawyers, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton lawyers, they can manipulate the economy, they can create loopholes, they get to win all ways. They get PR as though they're helping us, they get to keep a lot of money, and they get to make a lot of friends, they get to live a very jet-set lifestyle. But that's, so both of these individuals both run very, very large foundations. And if you look here, here's Hillary Clinton also meeting with Anthony Fauci, all right? So something very common. So when you put both of these guys side by side, you have Hillary Clinton on one side and you have Bill Gates on the other side. Both have relationships, either direct or have had a relationship with Anthony Fauci. But one of the interesting things that you'll find is that the mainstream media will not talk about, nor will people who are in any one of these camps, that they both are connected through Gavi, okay? It's the organization that's a vaccine alliance, the Gates Vaccine Alliance that was created by Bill Gates. So he had his Gates Foundation, and then he created a separate entity, put in about $1 billion for the Gates Vaccine Alliance. And guess what? That Vaccine Alliance gave hundreds of millions of dollars to an initiative of the Clinton Foundation, and they also gave them hundreds of thousands of dollars directly. Vaccine Alliance. Think about that. Both organizations, if you go to both their websites, Clinton Global Initiative or Gates Foundation, all very, very involved in global vaccine program to vaccinate everyone. That's one of their goals, to vaccinate everyone. So this is their connection. Two different foundations, a common thread that runs through them. The next thing is, when you look at Gavi, this is a little bit about Gavi. Gavi includes the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, UNICEF, the World Health Organization. It involves donor country governments, research agencies, civil societies. It involves vaccine manufacturers, private sector partners, civil society organizations, and implementing country governments, as well as the World Health Organization. Okay? So this is literally a binding organization that binds the Gates Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative, Gavi, a worldwide network committed to making sure every man and woman and child is vaccinated, literally. So let's go on and look at this a little more deeper. Some of you may know, it's good for review, some of you may know that I talked about that the United Nations set up the Sustainable Development Goals, where they laid out these development goals, 17 goals which paints a utopia for the world. Well, guess what? Gavi is a supporter of them. Okay? So the Vaccine Alliance, Gates Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative is a supporter of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Well, what is the Sustainable Development Goals? Well, before I get into that, let me just give you a little bit of background. Many people do not understand that pharmaceutical companies are in big, dire problem. They're actually failing. Year over year, they put more and more money into R&D, and less new products are being discovered because their products are not being even allowed by the FDA because of toxicity. One of the companies that I created out of my MIT PhD was a company called Cytosolve. In fact, when I first created Cytosolve, I did my PhD and me and my advisor spun it out of MIT. In fact, we thought, wow, pharma companies, by the way, they're losing money, they create drugs that are highly toxic, wouldn't they want to use us? And then frankly, we could have helped them create better drugs that weren't toxic. In fact, we got involved early on where a SBIR grant was put out. Hey, could you even help develop vaccines faster with less toxicity? We applied, we didn't get it. However, we have a technology that could actually help figure out the toxicity. Obviously, they're not interested in that because we would discover they're so toxic. So, we do a lot of work fundamentally on natural products, but pharma is not even interested in using a powerful technology that I created that can really help understand toxicities. Why? Because their real motivation is get stuff out there. They are like a locomotive moving at light speed, and it's all about profit. But what you can see here is year over year, pharma is spending more and more money. That's what this bar chart says, and they're finding less and less, or in fact, they're getting less and less new drugs approved by the FDA. Why? Because they're toxic. And by the way, for pharmaceutical companies, it takes them almost 13 years to go through the regulatory process to get a drug out there, and you and I can sue them. Okay? Let's remember that. You and I can sue them. So high risk, high investment, and then they can be sued. So high liability problems there. So that's one of the things that you want to understand with pharma. And by the way, this is another graph that gives you the same look here. The orange line, year over year R&D spending is escalating, and less new drugs are being found by them or being allowed, approved by the FDA. There you go. Okay, so that gives you the background. Now, let's go to the Sustainable Development Goals. These are the goals that were laid out by the United Nations, and you can see these goals look, really cool. Oh wow, end poverty, right? Zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, climate action, life below water. These are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They're painting this utopia, and if you read more carefully, and this is something I want everyone to listen to, is how do they plan on achieving this utopia? Okay? How do they plan on achieving this utopia? Again, Gavi, the organization that the Clinton Foundation supports and has got money from, that the Gates Foundation started, that organization supports these Sustainable Development Goals. Well, how do they plan on getting there? How do they actually plan on getting to those UN Sustainable Development Goals? Their path to utopia is global vaccination. Global vaccination. And in fact, this is laid out, you can look it up in the Immunization Agenda 2030, a global strategy to leave no one behind. One of our great researchers, Alexa, really brought me up to date on this. It was very valuable, but it says leave no one behind. A global strategy, leave no one behind. Okay? And how do they plan to get there? Well, if you read the first sentence of this document, it says a world where everyone, everywhere, at every age, fully benefits from vaccines for good health. Everyone. Doesn't say someone, it says everyone. Everywhere, at every age, fully benefits from vaccines for good health. And the bottom of it here, as you can read here, it says to leave no one behind. I don't know if you guys can see it here. It says to leave no one behind. For some reason it's cut off, but on the bottom it's being cut off. Maybe I can move it up here and you guys can see it here. There. If you can see it right there, it says leave no one behind. Okay? So that's what the goal is here, to leave no one behind in this model. And the Sustainable Development Goals, these are the 17, and 14 to 15 of these Sustainable Development Goals say that in order to achieve them, we must vaccinate everyone. They call it immunization, but that's what they mean. So for example, to achieve ending poverty, in fact, removing gender-related barriers to immunization. Even to get gender equality, immunization is important, okay? Immunization promotes healthy and productive workforce. Immunization protects people from poverty, so on and so on and so on. So they've painted this utopia, and then adjunct to that is that we must vaccinate everyone. If we go deeper into here, these are their hero countries. Their hero countries are Sweden, Denmark, and France. These are their top 3 hero countries that people are really doing this well. Well, just to give you an update, as I've said before, Denmark, about 2 weeks ago, rushed through an emergency coronavirus law. An emergency coronavirus law. You know what that law does? This is what that law does. By the way, this is Denmark, where it's supposed to be peaceable, loving, free love, and openness in society. Well, it's not so open when they're saying is Denmark's parliament on Thursday night unanimously passed an emergency coronavirus law which gives health authorities powers to force testing, treatment, which means vaccinate, and quarantine with the backing of the police, which means people can come into your home and vaccinate you in Denmark. This is one of the UN's SDG 3's sustainable highlights. The same program, SDG 3, that Gavi, which Bill Gates and Hillary Clinton support. Okay? And who is behind this? Well, who's behind this is big global pharma. And in fact, the organization that's behind them is International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association, IFPMA. And they're all supported by the World Health Organization and the UN. And if you go right to their website, by the way, everything I'm sharing with you, there's nothing conspiracy here. You can go look at it. I happen to be the guy who puts it together in a form to present it in a systems manner. Well, David Ricks, the chairman of Eli Lilly, Zhao Shigori, who's the chairman of Shionogi, and Severin Schwan, who's a CEO of Roche. And if you look at these guys have done quite well in the last couple of months. Roche's stock has surged with coronavirus tests. Lilly and CureVac have announced global collaboration for mRNA cancer vaccines, and same with Shionogi. So when you look at vaccines, by the way, pharma companies are failing, they're losing money, but look at this. Look at this. Vaccines, the savior for failing pharma, 17% growth. The Indian economy is growing at 7%, now it's down to 2%. The US economy is growing at 2%, now it's at -3%. Well, look at this industry, 17% compounded annual growth year over year. They're about $60 billion today, and they're planning on doubling every 6 years to $120 billion in 2026. And the global HPV vaccine, which is one of the most notorious vaccines, which has injured many women, will reach $11 billion at 16% growth. Okay, Merck, by the way, and we'll get to that, makes that vaccine. So when you really look at it, here's a picture for you. You have Gavi on the one hand, on the left and the right. It doesn't really matter anymore, left or right, but you have Miss Clinton here and Mr. Gates here. Fauci's up there having met with both of them, the Clinton Foundation and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I hope this is clear, okay? Two sides of the same coin. So let's look a little more at Gavi. What is Gavi really about? Well, Gavi, interesting enough, both Hillary Clinton and Bill Gates love Monsanto. Both are lovers of genetically engineered foods. They both love glyphosate because they think all the dark matter, or all the people in Africa and India, they need all their pesticides. They need genetically engineered food. Hillary Clinton got funded by Monsanto. Bill Gates had shares in Monsanto. All right? Both of them have deep connections. Again, another commonality. Both supporters of Monsanto. By the way, finally people are waking up. There was a gentleman, a worker, who just won a major lawsuit against Monsanto, against their chemicals. I've done some research over the last 5 years. You can go read about it. 6 papers I wrote, clearly showing how the genetic engineering of soy upregulates formaldehyde and downregulates a very important antioxidant called glutathione. And I was hit hard on it. We won back, and we essentially exposed that genetic engineering is not, it doesn't produce something that's the same as the organic version, which, by the way, the stupid newspapers like the New York Times are just eating and repeating and regurgitating what Monsanto wanted them to say. And the reason Monsanto recently sold to Bayer was they needed a brand uplift, so they put themselves under a children's aspirin company. Pretty evil. Now, the other company both of these organizations work with is Merck. Merck is the one that created the Gardasil vaccine, big vaccine manufacturer. Merck works very closely with the Clinton Global Initiative and also with the Gates Foundation. So again, 3 common threads here. And then finally, you have the CDC, which also works very, very closely with the Gates Foundation as well as the Clinton Foundation. So you have Monsanto, Gavi, Merck, CDC. So just take a step back. 2 different organizations, common interests, essentially twins, one called Clinton and the other called Gates. So let's go back. Now, the other organization that's very deeply involved in this, we cannot forget the World Health Organization, led by a Marxist who was a lover of the Chinese Communist Party and has close ties with the Communist Party. That's this guy Tedros, as he goes by. All right, so there you go. That is the picture of what we call the establishment, okay, the cabal. It's black and white as you can see it. Again, I encourage everyone to go do the research if you want to understand more about this. So in many ways, these two people are the two sides of the same coin. Okay? Bill Gates and Hillary Clinton. I hope that's clear. And by the way, I have someone joining us here. I have Jen Bennett here. Jen's one of our moms. Jen, say hello. Can you put yourself on? Jen, say hello.
Hi, good evening.
Jen and I are going to have a discussion when we get to the not so obvious establishment. We'll come back to Jen. But I hope everyone understands that this is fundamentally what's going on. These two people are the same. All right. So, in fact, this is an article that came out. Monsanto and Bill Gates, as you'll see here, are top donors to the Clinton Family Foundation. A quick look at the table of Clinton Family Foundation donors reveals both the Melinda Gates Foundation and Monsanto as two of the heavy-hitting donors to the Clinton Family Foundation. Bill Gates, of course, pushes vaccines on the world, while Monsanto pushes GMOs. It's a toxic 1-2 punch. Hillary Clinton's donors also include drug makers Pfizer, ExxonMobil, Dow, etc. And the key thing is all the corporations, in the last sense, are of course buying influence from the Clintons. This obvious fact was widely attacked by the extreme leftist Democratic Party operative George Stephanopoulos. He's a guy who's a talking head who also turned out donated $75,000 in donation to the Clinton Foundation, and he claims he thought that he was donating for deforestation research. Okay? That's how these people work. They act stupid. So let's talk about the dynamics before I go to the here and now. Remember, one of the things I learned, look, when you come from my background, as an untouchable from India, working class kid where I had to work, I actually am trying to figure out how to win. I'm not a Kennedy or a Clinton or a J. Paul Getty where, we create foundations and trying to help people and then, talking like this, whatever, right? I actually want to win for you and me because it's a matter of life or death. So I've always been understanding why is it that sometimes people win and sometimes they lose, and why does human suffering keep going on forever? Sometimes it seems like we're just on the verge of winning and we get sold out. Everyone know what I'm talking about? This is what has occurred throughout human history. The people from the bottoms up, and the key word is bottoms up, B-U, bottoms up, and then you have top down. You have the saviors coming. I don't care if they're the establishment or the not so obvious establishment. We as people, frankly, want our freedom. We come bottoms up. People like you and me, bottoms up, with not, nice cameras, whatever we do, the imperfect way that we can, and we try to fight. But in opposition to the bottoms up is the establishment. But the establishment, remember, these guys are very, very clever. Don't think they're stupid. Don't think we're going to win by not understanding their sophistication. They are extremely clever. They don't fight directly, just like the Romans didn't go after Jesus Christ. They fight using Judases. They fight using Pharisees. They fight using Sadducees. They fight using other intermediaries to confuse the masses, to tell them, oh, we care about you. They even speak the rhetoric of change and revolution, like this idiot Bernie Sanders, by the way, who just sold out to Biden. He just gave all of his votes, which I predicted, and no one wanted to believe me. He's one of the not so obvious establishment. But when we figure out the not so obvious establishment is when change will occur, like that, like that, like that. But if we do not figure out what the not so obvious establishment is, we will surely suffer, and we will surely prolong our suffering. So this part that I'm going to share with you is probably the most important thing. It's easy. Look, I've hit Fauci. We got, I think, 65,000 signatures? Close to 65. We'll hit 100,000. That's gone. Everyone else is now using Fire Fauci. That's great. Even Trump's retweeting out people who are taking our stuff. Wonderful. That's the obvious establishment. But the not so obvious establishment is who always destroys movements. And so let's talk about them. So here, what you see is you have the establishment, you have the obvious establishment. And I'm going to use an example. In the 2016 election, the obvious establishment was Hillary Clinton, right? Part of the establishment, stealing whatever, breaking computers, starting wars in Libya, go down the list. I'm going to go down the list. Obvious to see. Well, in opposition to her, by the way, part of that included, Obama, who created this awful healthcare program, which basically emboldened big pharma, it emboldened big insurance, and it emboldened big hospitals. And you have our boy Clinton, okay, and Bush. Probably all related, some people say, okay? But there you go. And then you have There's Obama tapping, hanging out with Romney. All lawyers, by the way. I think all these three guys are lawyers. Lawyers, okay? In opposition to that are people, oops, let me share the screen here, I'm sorry. I forgot to transition here. Let me go back here to the people in the audience there at home. So here's the obvious establishment, Hillary Clinton and her other boys, Obama, Clinton, Bush, and there's Romney, etc. Now, in opposition to the establishment is the change agents, the people from bottoms up. We want to build a movement bottoms up. And these are people with names, you can call them left-wing people, right-wing Tea Party, the Green Party, people on the ground, say no to GMOs. These are people coming bottoms up. And these are people, we're willing to go to the streets. We're willing to get our hands dirty, okay? We're not parachuting in and taking a mic and then parachuting out. We're actually out there giving out flyers, going door to door. Mothers, workers, etc. Bottoms up. And that's a very different character than this top-down nonsense of foundations, etc. So that's on the other side. Now, the establishment in its cleverness, it's very, very clever, has created throughout history something called the not-so-obvious establishment. The not-so-obvious establishment, I repeat, is created to take the energy off the bottoms-up people on the ground and sucker them back to paying homage to the establishment. That's what they exist. And they do it in very clever ways. They got Hollywood celebrities like idiots like Lady Gaga. They have the entire Hollywood elite, people doing nice concerts, Bono singing about AIDS and all this stuff, right? Doesn't even know how the immune system works. Doesn't matter. He gets to sell more records. And Fauci will be up there with him to get his publicity. So we have the establishment and the not-so-obvious establishments. So what does this not-so-obvious establishment look like? Okay, so we have an opportunity to go about a couple years ago and learn. Well, one of them is this guy, okay, Bernie Sanders. I can't stand this guy, okay? I don't know how people even vote for this guy, okay? He, to me, doesn't look like an honest human being. And what did he say? He goes, I represent the people and not Wall Street, but vote for Hillary. That's what he did. A lot of my friends said, Shiva, you should vote for Bernie. I said, look, he's going to sell you out, and that's what he did. And people don't learn. People do not learn because he speaks a rhetoric of change. But at the end of the day, what did he do? He gave all of his votes to Hillary, talking about the lesser of two evils. This is typically their technique, the lesser of two evils nonsense. They never want to build independent movements. Bernie, if he was true, he would have said, screw you, and he would have built his movement. That's why, when I'm running for Senate here, this is not about just winning a Senate seat. We're going for it all. We're going for truth, freedom, and health. That's why our movement, our politics are going global. That's why so many of you are getting encouraged, because this Senate race is more powerful than any movement that has occurred, Bernie's stupid movement, or even the win that occurred with Trump. That was important, it was disruptive, but our movement in Massachusetts for US Senate is something that's energizing people in this country and all over the world. It's really for truth, freedom, and health. It's coming bottoms up, by the way. When we put Jen on, you'll understand this. But you have Bernie here. If you can't beat him, he says join him. And even Trump put out a good tweet which says Bernie Sanders endorsing crooked Hillary is like Occupy Wall Street endorsing Goldman Sachs. But what did Bernie serve? Finally, he hugs and kisses her. By the way, Bernard just did this again with nutjob Joe Biden. By the way, I don't care for either party. I never voted in my life. I voted for Donald Trump because I saw him as a disruptor. I ran as an independent. This year I'm running as a Republican. I don't care about either party, but the goal is to get on the ballot and to win. So what did Bernie serve? Bernie served the purpose of sucking all these activists, a lot of very, very sincere young people who believed in this not so obvious establishment character. And he's, by the way, Bernie is built his entire life on never holding a job. Never. Was a failed carpenter, failed erotic movie writer, or whatever he was. Can't really have much skills. Couch surfer. But that's the kind of people the establishment likes. And they use these people to get people excited because they speak something that appeals to them. But the purpose of Bernie is to sucker people off the streets right back into the establishment. In this case, right in the mouths of Hillary Clinton. And that's what Bernard did. So just reflect on that. So basically, like Bill and Melinda, like Gates and Clinton, you have the same two sides of the same coin. All right? Now, if you look at the not so obvious establishment with this diagram, you'll see Monsanto haunt us. By the way, Elizabeth Warren voted for the Monsanto Protection Act. You have the Clintons, you have the New York Times, you have Gawker Media. And by the way, fortunately, they were sued and put out of business. All of these people who seemingly act like they're of different sides, but they're actually part of the same family, part of the same incestuous clan. They'll act like they're against each other, but they actually are one unit. And they stand in opposition to this, which is we the people. They do not want us organizing on our own. And the key features of these people is they always talk about, yeah, call your congressman, let's get this bill passed. And they always tell you, now is not the time to build a movement. Now is not the time to get radical. Now is not, go talk to your congressman, write to your congressman. They discourage conversation and they discourage us taking to the streets. That's what they do. And I've noticed this as an activist since I was an 18-year-old kid. We'd say, hey, look, let's start a movement. No, you shouldn't do that. Don't say that. Say this. Say how you talk. And that's what you'll figure out. And they're professional organizers. They're paid. They have their little nonprofits. They get funding from people. They create little franchises. Their leaders typically have 20, 30 assistants around them. You can't even talk to them. But the key feature is they always tell you to get off the streets and go beg for crumbs from Congress people, from your legislators. And this has been something that's been going on throughout history. If you go look at the Russian Revolution, workers and soldiers and army people were striking against the Tsar, the obvious establishment. You go look at Russian history. And as that movement was growing explosively, the Tsar created a legislature. He called it the Duma. And in the Duma, it was a safety valve. So people come off the street and they start talking, thinking they're fighting. But you know what? They give up their independent movement. They stop building the bottoms up. And that is what the establishment wants. They want you to believe Bernie. But what does he do? They suckered back into the establishment. In India, we had the same thing. We had a guy called Gandhi, okay? Mahatma Gandhi, okay? Gandhi, what he did was exactly the same thing. In India, what I can tell you is that in the 1920s, there were revolutionary movements coming up, like the American Revolution. We want to get rid of these British. We want to kick them out. We may even want a violent revolution because our people have suffered for 300 years. So in opposition to the establishment, they created what was called the Indian National Congress, a nice little legislature. And they tried to take all these people off the streets and put them there. And then they flew in this guy Gandhi. Literally, if you go look at his history, in South Africa, he was a freaking racist. He did not support the poor blacks or any of the poor brown people. He was supporting Transvaal trading rights for a small set of people. And he failed. But he becomes the top-down model supported by the Indian elite. Go look at his history. You know, dressed in some nice garb, you know, talking some nice words. By the way, all these people have really good speechwriters too, okay? They really say some really good words. It's like modern day advertising, just like people use Hollywood. And his goal was not to have a good revolution. He told people it's good to get your head beaten. And what ended up happening in India was not a revolution, not significant change. It may seem good to many white liberals or right now to think, oh wow, India had this really cool guy and then people didn't violently attack him. What really happened was India had a transfer of power. In fact, the Indian documents are not called the Declaration of Independence. They're called the transfer of power from white men with crowns to brown men with white hats. India never really had a good revolution. And that's why India had massive 70 years of corruption, one family running the country over 4 generations until a populist leader like Modi got elected recently. But Gandhi was the not so obvious establishment. Sorry to break the news to you, but that's what he was. So let's go back to what I want to talk about here. Recently, I saw this tweet by this fellow, Robbie Kennedy. He's got a good brand, RFK Jr., but you know what? He's Robbie Kennedy. And what Robbie Kennedy put out, by the way, many of you know, we've been out there hitting hard at Gates, hard at Fauci, hard at the WHO, hard at the CDC. And we didn't know, and we've been very critical of this gentleman, and you'll understand why. But this tweet comes out, and I was like, wow, people sent it to me, and he goes, a nation investigation illustrates the moral hazards surrounding the Gates Foundation $50 billion charitable enterprise, okay? This was from Mr. Kennedy. And then this comes out. Bill Gates' agenda in India, exposed by Robert Kennedy Jr. Exposed, as though others had not already exposed this. So now you have Kennedy thrusting himself after, for the last, several months, we've been out there bottoms up, fighting, and we'll talk about him some more, exposing the entire cabal, the Clintons, the CDC, the WHO, the Big Pharma. So now the establishment, or he himself, and we'll talk about this more, does this, okay? This just came out seven hours ago, Jen, okay? This is what he puts out, okay? So I'm looking at this, and I said, let's have a scientific analysis of what's actually going on. So when you start doing the analysis, what do you find? Is this guy really a fighter? Because you know what? Historically, we've been told great speeches by the Kennedys. And by the way, point of fact, John Kennedy is the one who created the 1962 Vaccination Act, which led to many, many injuries. And then his brother, Ted Kennedy, instead of eliminating it, to perhaps preserve his brother's legacy, created the National Vaccine Injury Program, which created the vaccine courts, which protected vaccine manufacturers. And then we were given some bones after that of some religious exemptions. And instead of going after and getting rid of everything, Robbie Kennedy comes in and says, I'm going to help you fight Big Pharma. That's how he talks. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit upset with this guy. And his whole thing is, we're going to sue. We're going to go to the judges. Give me your money. Top down. As though only the Kennedys can fight for you and me. Top down movement. And what has he done for 15 years? Nothing. Zero results. In fact, what's happened is the anti-vax movement, or the movement for medical freedom, has lost, and in fact it has collaborated with people who are part of Big Pharma. That's what it is, what has happened. And let me show you the actual facts here so you can make your own decision. So if you remember, I was talking, this is a Clinton Foundation in September 2008. It's called the Press Release Winners of Clinton Global Citizens Award. Who do you see? The Clinton Global Initiative Foundation gives a nice award to Robbie Kennedy here, okay? That's in 2008. And then they did another press release and they recognized him again. And you can see the not so obvious establishment in this area. You got Barack Obama there, you got John McCain, you have Bono, you have Ashley Judd, and there's Kennedy again. These people are part of the Kennedy cabal. You see what I'm saying? Gates Family Foundation, Kennedy. We know they're the same from what I've shared with you, but here is Robbie Kennedy, very close friends, in fact being given awards by the Clinton Global Initiative, which by the way is all about vaccines, which he claims he's fighting against. That's 2008. So there's Robbie